Thank you guys for listening. My name is Samantha and Jesse.
My name is Remoy George Philip the First.
And this is Maskulinity.
So today I think it's important that we understand all types of masculinity, and there's not one sort of monolithic masculinity, but there are these large presences of masculinity that we so often see, but we don't have more context for. In today's episode, I think we can do some really good job breaking down a specific type of masculinity. That's kind of like the hood masculinity, right? This urban masculinity. Today on the show, we have Christopher Saunders, a good friend.
Hola.
He is a criminal justice student at John J. U.
Just said.
He's from the Bronx, New York. He has a specific story of how he got to where he's at, and I'm excited to uncover all that today and kind of flesh that out. But real quickly, why are you studying law or criminal justice, and what are you trying to do with that?
So pretty much just living in my neighborhood and the experiences I've gone through, I've seen and learned that there is a need for people of color to be present that understand the law and that can help other people within their community.
Yeah. So to backtrack, you wrote this story for Rover, the online magazine of Theo's, called My First Time, and that very specifically speaks to an incident where you didn't have kind of the tools or the access to information. Correct. And you being a person of color put you in a certain situation that was very, for lack of a better term, fucked up.
Yeah.
So you want to tell specifically what that story was?
Yeah. So when I was about 12 years old, me and some friends had created a skate park in an abandoned park. And while leaving one afternoon to skate home, some cops jumped out of a car with guns out, cursed me out, made me, get...
Did you do anything?
No. I just followed orders. That blind belief in authority where you just you're told to do something, you do something, and when you have a gun to your head, you definitely do what the hell you're being
just
told.
A black kid skating and cops running.
Correct. And I was maybe 5'1", 5'2", 110 pounds soaking wet wearing Janko jeans. I highly doubt that I looked or fit the description of a criminal. Yeah, but to them I was, and they did what I guess their training or lack thereof allowed them to do. And, it was a very traumatic situation, being the second time that I had gotten a gun pulled out on me. And it was just get the fuck up against the wall. Don't fucking look at me. Where the fuck is the gun? Where the fuck are you coming from? Pat me down, grope me every single where.
You were 12, you said?
12.
12
years old. I was a child. I didn't look like an adult at that point.
For those who don't know or can't see, Saunders is a brolic dude. Saunders is beefy as fuck. He's just flexing all the time.
Now trying, yeah. It's
but back in the day,
it's the steroid chicken.
Back in the day, he was twiggy and just a fucking kid.
Yeah, and it was difficult, because they did what they did, and then they just walked away. So, as I wrote in the piece for Rover, it was just you're left with this hole inside of you of what just happened? Yeah. Why did this happen? And who consoles me now?
Sure, and then you return back to your everyday life and have to deal with that.
Exactly, where you now I had this fear of well, now will this happen again? Mm-hmm. But in a weird part, it was... I was used to kind of that thing in a weird way because of being in the hood. You always have to be on the ready anyways.
Well, I think that's a good transition. A good question I want to ask is I almost wonder if you return back to your neighborhood or your home and it's just normalized, people are yeah, so what? That happens.
Correct. Yeah, many people.
Right, yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Many people.
And how that just affects you as a child or as an individual, no matter what fucking age you are. Some sort of trauma you experience and people around you, it's oh, that's just normal. Deal with it.
Exactly. Many of the older individuals that I knew that were later teens, 16, 17, some guys that were, 13, 14. It was just oh, well, that finally happened to you? Ain't a big deal. You walked away, right? You ain't go to the bookings. All right. Everything is cool then. What you complaining about? And it's okay, so I guess I have to put a mask on and not show, because then at the same time now I am not strong enough because clearly they didn't have a problem with it and I do, so what, I'm weak? So I guess that was like as an adult, I've had to understand that was masculinity that was getting blasted in front of me from people that I knew and trusted. And then, some people I adopted it for many years.
Hell yeah.
Where it was just like, all right, cool. If I have pain, doesn't matter. Put it away. Don't worry about it. If I don't think about it, it doesn't exist. Or have rage, let me be angry about this and let me go point that anger at someone else. Like, because if someone else can have their way with me, why can't I have my way with others?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, it's easy to like caricaturize or kind of just throw kind of misunderstood language out there or just words out there without any responsibility. So to get some context, to ground us, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up on Longwood Ave in the South Bronx. The dirty stain, I guess, of New York City, since like the Bronx is supposed to be the worst. But it was great. Like, I loved my neighborhood. It was hard, but I guess like anything, you adapt to it. I moved to the Bronx when I was about 7 years old from Manhattan. Like, typical Dominican story. I'm born in the Heights, left the Heights, came to the South Bronx. And the Bronx was a very trying time in the early 90s. Because we moved here like 91, something like that.
Yeah.
And, cracked tops on the ground, like sand at the beach, broken glass everywhere, abandoned cars, burnt down buildings, empty lots everywhere. And no police presence, it's just there were no cops. And just the drugs, drugs every single where. And, no lack of opportunity for people of color. You see, all right, I can make a buck slinging these rocks. Why not?
Well, I mean, you've told me in the past, like, as a kid, since that was your normal, there was a part of you that was just like, enjoyed your childhood and loved like the beauty. Like, it was just kind of everything.
Yeah, you find fun in it. Like, did I run around? Like, did we play tag in abandoned buildings? Yeah, asbestos filled buildings, abandoned church. There was an abandoned church, an abandoned synagogue, because my neighborhood actually was predominantly Jewish in the 70s before white flight. And we ran around that abandoned synagogue. And, we, as kids, we used to play like we were pirates trying to find treasure in there. Really, we're playing around, we're playing in a heroin den, like needles everywhere, and easily, a health factor could have come from that. And luckily I never got pricked by anything, but that was the norm,
But also, like, so that's one way of looking at it, as it was just a beautiful childhood, but also not to have like this kind of unfortunate like poverty porn like viewpoint of it. It was tough, I'm assuming. And like, let's kind of bridge a gap here. Like, I grew up without a father. I grew up in a single mother household, but I grew up in the suburbs of suburban Texas. What is that like in your neighborhood?
There were 9 out of 10, let's say, of my friends, their father was not present. Whether it be, they had been murdered or they were in jail, or, they just weren't around. That wasn't part of the dynamic of many of the homes and friends and family that I knew. They just weren't there. And, that leaves a crazy void for kids, because this figure that you're supposed to have and look up to gain these things of like going from a child into a young adult into, a man, quote unquote, is like not there. So who do you learn these skills from? You look to people that are 2-3 years older than you, or even your age, that are just doing things that you feel represent what a man should be. And in my neighborhood in the South Bronx, it was like, okay, you look up to the drug dealers because it's the possessions, the materialistic things are what make an individual feel like they have.
Right.
To be an adult is to have, to do. So if they have gold chains, if they have beepers, if they have, Volkswagens and Saabs at that time, which was like the cool thing with rims and music, then that's an adult, isn't it? Isn't that what I'm supposed to aspire to be or look like? Like, okay, sure, I can try to play that game. But then you realize it's a dangerous game to want to get into.
It's really interesting you bring that up, because I was recently at a presentation in Harlem with this guy who hopefully will be on the show soon. His name is Obari Cartman, and he was talking about, the ways that for kids who don't have like a father presence, right? Like as a young boy. Well, I don't know if it was him, but it was somebody who was there, was talking about, like people in the education system, like kids mostly being taught by women in schools, and then you go home and then like you have your mom who's there teaching you, which is like great, obviously, like kudos to her. But there's also this like, this makeup that's missing that, she just doesn't have access to, no matter how hard she tries, right? And
Yes.
so looking back, like, what do you see was missing for you? And like, what do you see was missing for you as like a child, like that you would want to have injected into, urban neighborhoods today for young men to have as a reference point?
Be there. I want to be there for my kids when I have them. Like, I think that's a very important thing. My mother was there, but then they reached a point when she was not, because she wanted to work, or she had to work. And her idea was she aspired to have as much money as she could to make sure that I had everything that I could need. Mm-hmm. But sometimes the presence of a parent or a father, in my perspective, is important. Because, as a kid, I remember looking up to my dad when he was there and wanting to be around him. Like, this is your superhero. This is your own personal superhero. And when that person isn't there, then who do you get? And, in my time, or when I was a kid, I feel like there were no role models. Like, the only thing I can really remember about wanting to be is Jordan. And it's like, that's it. That's as high as, or that's what was presented. Mm-hmm. The best you can be as a black person is a basketball player. What? Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many other accomplishments that have been done by people of color, whether it be Latino or black, but we don't get taught that in school. Who do you learn about? So then you gravitate to the things that are closest to you, I feel. When you get out of school, while you're in school, you have friends. They act a certain way. They're bringing their neighborhoods to this place. Then you go to your neighborhood, and then you are back in the trenches again.
I mean, look, like, it's easy to see and identify impoverished neighborhoods. It's easy to identify successful strategies and systems or areas that are very successful, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to look at these and understand that there's variables in there that kind of provide for these scenarios. So, like, in a neighborhood where there is no opportunities, where there are no fathers, where there are single parents who are struggling just to put food on the table, and then to meet the demands of also being just a parent, this is challenging. And then that puts the kids in a system of recycling the information or the experiences that they've already experienced. So it'd be correct. Just provides a terrible cycle. We've spoken earlier about your relationship with your mom and how she tried her hardest to fill both those roles. What was that like growing up?
My mom's quote to me was, "Before the streets kill you, I'll kill you." And it was just like, she ruled with an iron fist. It was like, I am going to make you the best man that you could possibly be. But it's difficult because,
it's a challenge, especially when your husband and your partner isn't there, and whatever situations happened between you two previously will then define the way that you will continue to live your life. So if it's an abusive situation, or whether if it's just a challenge, or there's just a person who's not there, that will determine the way that you raise your children or live the rest of your life, right?
Correct. Yeah, like the domestic violence that happened shaped the information that she gave to me, as far as like, you respect a woman, you don't do this, you don't do that. Like, but it's hard, society, treats you a certain way and tells you what you should and shouldn't be. And when you go against the grain, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And especially in the hood at that point in time when, the approval of others matters so much. Like, if you are not in the in crowd, you are left out, and the cold sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how, like, your relationship with your mother at home then impacted the way that you would act and move through the world. Like, if there was kind of like a soft spot that, I'm just gonna go with kind of like the dominant dynamic seems to be, you may have like a soft spot or whatever where you're able to kind of cultivate that at home with your mom who's nurturing and loving you. And then when you step outside, was there like, this like tough cloak that you had to put on or whatever in order to fit in with your fellow like homeboys?
Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. It was, my mom raised me with hugs and kisses and like,
and an iron fist.
And an iron fist. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, it was like the moment I left that safe spot, it was like I had to switch registers, put on this different face, put on this different personality of like, do not come at me twisted. Like, you cannot. But that's because everybody was outside like that. Like, so I just adopted the role that everybody else had.
Sure,
and then
everybody's performing something.
Correct. You have to, because if you care too much while you're outside, then you soft. And those that are soft, you know, like the saying, you prey, you become prey. You know, that's it. There's nothing else you can do except hold your own. And it's difficult because I never wanted to fight. It wasn't in my nature because my mom didn't raise me to be like that. And I had to develop and cultivate that hate. You know, I had to make sure that when things went awry in the neighborhood, I could be counted on as being the worst person I could be. And that sucked.
Wow.
It really sucked. Because I didn't want to be that. But it's easy to see anger from a group of people pointed at one person and see how that manifests itself and how it plays out. You know, like, you never want to be on the receiving end of an ass whooping.
Well, how does masculinity in the hood become so predatory?
Because, in my opinion, because this is just my view from my little lens of my neighborhood, no one stops you. You know, it was dog eat dog. Dudes on this corner are selling and dudes on the next block are selling, but making $2,000 a day isn't enough. So let me see if I can go get those dudes. You know, someone is walking through. Maybe you don't have enough money to get into the hustle game, so you're able to get a knife and you start robbing people in the hood. And then it's glorified, you know? It's this thing of like, yo, you ain't got no money. How you got that chain? You know what I'm saying? I pulled the jukes real quick.
I'd like to pause there because I don't know at all, and I'd want to know, in the 90s, in your neighborhood in the South Bronx, what was your school system like, or what was your school experience like?
Garbage. It was absolutely garbage.
So, and that's what I think. There's a lot of things that people take for granted when they just say, like, the hood, poverty issues, oh, black people are just this way. Is like, if you don't have access to opportunity,
correct.
If you don't have access to a decent education
yeah,
that also represents your skin color, you can see yourself within the information that is being told. How else, like, how are you supposed to make your way? Where is the opportunity for class mobility? Where is the opportunity for upward mobility? Where is the opportunity to even see yourself as successful if you can't see it in your past or your present or your future?
It's difficult. It's not, in my opinion, it's not. It wasn't there for me anyways. You know, like, I sit down with my wife and we talk about what grade school looked like for her and me, and it was like light years in difference. You know, like, I've had to relearn, you know, pretty much K through 12, being in college and being lucky enough to have my wife sitting next to me. You know, I've always been good with putting words to paper, but not understanding what it was, like, what it really meant. What was the formula to that?
Sure,
like,
the why or the how, right?
Yeah, like, this is a verb. Oh, well, that's what run is? This means this other thing? And
it sounds so elementary, but if you don't have access...
If you don't have it, I didn't. I honestly can tell you that up until the point where I graduated high school, the only thing I was good at was fighting. That's the only thing I remember. Like, I don't remember any of it. Like, I've tried and I've sat down with my wife and she's like, well, what do you remember from grade school? Like, she can sit there and outline what grade she was in when she learned what academic process. And I'm like, well, that year I learned that I should hit a dude first before he hits me. I learned that I should be paying attention to body language. This year I remembered that, you know, these mannerisms or these code words mean that I need to be on point. Like, that was my education. It wasn't anything about like, am I going to be a doctor when I grow up? No, it was like, am I going to get out of bed and avoid getting into a fight today?
That's infuriating.
Yeah. But then you develop a like for it.
Well, let me just say what's on my mind. So,
tell me how you really feel.
Right, like, if you had been a girl in that position,
so it would have been way worse. It would have been. I would feel would be even harder. You know, because you're dealing. I would, you know, from knowing many women that grew up in the hood with me, like, they were dealing with the same things I was, except they had that added layer of being oppressed by more men too.
Yeah.
You know, they were dealing it within their own gender, and from the opposite side. Like, was I worried about a woman coming and stabbing me? No, because there's that masculinity of like, there's no way a woman could ever overpower me. Like, I'm just not worried about that. But then a woman
But they would get overpowered.
Of course.
Yeah.
It was a common thing, you know? And then to also believe that a woman could be sexually assaulted, you know, verbal abuse that they would deal with on a day in, day out basis, and the cat calls with the abuse. Yo, what up, Ma? Oh, you don't want to say what up? Fuck you then, bitch. What? Because she didn't want to acknowledge you. She deserved all of that, but that was what it was. So many women had to put on their mask as well and be like, I don't give a shit about this because it's happened so much, you know? Where like the bad just becomes normal.
Okay. So you're talking about like in whether it's the sphere of masculinity or femininity in the hood, like it has to nurture like these certain tropes or these certain safety methods.
Hate.
Right. How do you, where you're at now, as the adult you are now and the experience you have now and the hope that you have, how do you even imagine that changing?
When you feel that you're something and you've been taught to be this thing, and then you have to go outside and you have to put on this act, and then you do this act for so long that that whole idea of like fake it till you make it, you actually turn the fake it into actually who you are. Until you realize, shit, there's something really wrong with this. And then, you know, you distance yourself from the people that have normalized these actions. And then you say, okay, well, I can be more like this group over here. So I can fake that, but then you like that. Being smart is nice. Understanding things, having complex conversations, and understanding people's feelings, being empathetic to the plight of other people is great. But then who are you?
Sure.
Like, am I faking it right now that I'm in school? Like, I have one degree, I'm going after another, and I want to continue to get degrees, but I am still constantly, like, I feel like at times, like, I don't belong where I am. I don't deserve what I've worked hard for. You know, even when I graduated from Hostos, it was like, my wife was like, aren't you really happy? And it just like, it didn't feel like it was real because I was used to so much bad. Like things was like, everything was an uphill battle. And like, to be able to go to graduation and sit there with all these other people and like have a cap and gown on, I was just like, is this real? Like, am I going to wake up from this? Like, there's no way that I got honors and graduated. I was in the top 1% because I had one of the highest GPAs. Like, bullshit. There's no way that that's real because I don't know who I am. You know, like I have these feelings and I'm trying to cultivate these feelings. I want to express to other people, young men of color, you have some options, even though you might feel like you don't.
Like when we talk about humanity and we talk about masculinity and we talk about like who we are as people, it's really important to highlight like who we are on the inside and like the ways that our environments like cultivates like the worst possible shit coming out of us, and then like who our best selves can be. Like when we're looking at notions of like masculinity, you having to be tough, you having to be all of these things where like intellect is not sexy, right? What's sexy is your ability to be strong and fight, and like if somebody crosses you, you'll let them know violently that they'll never do it again. And it's the context that we've created as a society for you to show up as that, when actually you are actually intellectually gifted and you have had the opportunity to explore that and express that because now you're in school. And that's you.
I think a lot of it, yeah. A lot of it has to do too with like having a good support system. You know, like if I have to pinpoint certain things, like my friend growing up, Victor, he saved my life, and my wife Hannah has like helped me mold my life.
We're coming to grips with this idea that pretty much everybody has to perform some part of their identity. It seems minorities especially have to perform to an exceptional amount just to survive.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, now that you're at a place where you can kind of see that, how do you help young men who grow up in a similar situation or growing up in a similar situation to what you grew up in, you don't have to perform this kind of masculinity. You don't have to fucking call a woman a bitch. You don't have to call a homosexual a faggot. You don't have to fight to survive every day. How do you do that in this neighborhood?
I think it takes more adults to be doing the right thing and showing those examples. If kids don't see it, They don't know it exists. So that's why I try to carry myself a certain way. Like one of the small things that I do is like during graduation time, I see a lot of kids from middle school and high school graduating, and young men and women of color, and they'll walk by with their cap and gown, and I'll tell them, good job. Congratulations. You know, let them feel that good. You know, you can feel good for what you're doing. Because if everybody in the house in the hood is dropping out and saying, man, fuck school, you develop that feeling with them. You know, you grow with the bad, where you say, okay, it's okay.
I mean, if you nurture bad,
you're just going to be the best bad person you can be, you know? And it's easy to do that. It's so easy. Hate is so easy to make,
and it's hard to
powerful.
It's hard to nurture hope in a world that seems hopeless.
Correct. So it's up to us. It's up to men, other men of color, to go out there and wear a fitted cap and baggy jeans and talk correct, and it be okay. It shouldn't be that you're, having people that are not black say, interesting that you speak very well. What? Like, this is the image that has been ingrained into people's minds. Like, you look this way, so you are that way.
Well, what about, how do boys treat girls in the hood? When you were growing up?
Horrible,
Describe horrible.
Walking by the catcalls, which exist now. The language, I think one of the biggest standout things was like when you are talking about masculinity, to have a man shut down in front of other men. Whew, men want to go crazy, and boys, especially boys, that there's all this built up frustration about everything, so it's easier to lash out. So, yo, what's up, shorty? What you doing? And then all of a sudden she's like, please. Or just ignore. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, fuck you, bitch. Fuck is your problem? You don't even look that good. Hold on, but she looked good enough for you to talk to her just a second ago, but then she has to deal with that. Or just walking around like men that walk up to women and grab their hands. Like, what are you doing?
But I mean, I think one thing that struck me here, and like I might be naive about this, but like, what does that what does it do when you are a kid who every day you go through metal detectors, you take off your belt, you do all that, then you do something, whatever, you get put in jail. Like, you're going through the exact same treatment, going into that jail, taking all your shit off, going through that metal detector. Like, I just can't imagine what that does to somebody's psyche and like their understanding of themselves within society, to be treated like a criminal every day.
You're an animal. That's the way
you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's the way you feel. You're an animal. When I would have to go, because I went to Monroe High School, you feel like an animal. Like, there was a line to get into school, and you wait. They slowly herd you in, and then take off this, take off that. And the metal detector wand gets passed all over you to make sure you don't got nothing on you, and then you begin your day. Like, you're just like, this is fucking. But then it becomes normal,
right?
And that's
it's normal.
That's what I don't want other kids to feel. You shouldn't feel that being treated like an animal is okay. Yeah. It should not be okay. Yeah. And it should be that when other people in your community treat you like an animal, you address that. Mm-hmm. But then at the same time, is being an animal necessary? From my background, it is. Like, you should have, what do they say? Have claws, I guess. But it doesn't mean that you have to always show them. But that's also a thing of being in the hood.
You mean to survive?
Correct.
Right, yeah.
Correct. Like, you need to be able to hold your own. But at what cost? Is the good outweighing the bad, or vice versa? Like, and this is a conversation that's really difficult. And a lot of it is all about masculinity. It has to do with the overpowering, being strong. And, young men of color are taught that from young, and women as well now, where, you need to be empowered. But can you be a feminist and still be hood? Yeah. You know what I mean? But at what cost? Yeah. How mean can you be to be okay?
Damn. Well, I mean, so kind of taking like a different turn here, wanted to talk a little bit about like, the gender spectrum and like sexuality, like sexual orientation, like what space is there in the hood, and specifically masculinity in the hood, for people who are non-gender conforming, or for people who are not hetero?
Well, for me growing up, calling someone a fag was just the norm, you know? You're a fag, to symbolize how weak you were.
Right.
And that in itself is an issue, you know? Why do you have to be, if you are part of the LGBTQ community, you are weak, you know? I learned a lot through my mom having a salon where I met many men and women that had different sexual orientations, and they were all amazing. You know, like you learn, and that's what I was thankful for, because everybody else around me was like, I don't want to fucking be around no fucking faggot, which is horrible. But then I'm going to get my haircuts in my mom's salon by a gay man named Alex, you know, and I loved Alex to death. He was the greatest person in the world. So I had to fight that. Could I ever let anybody know at that point because I was a kid or because I was a teenager? But I know a whole bunch of lesbians. I know, you know, very flamboyant gay men. I know gay men that are more thugged out than you. Because then I'm worried about my status as a kid. You know, you can't come across as, oh, because I know them, that I'm breathing that gay air and I must be gay too.
Because then if you're gay, then like you're obviously like that completely like dismantles any toughness that you've built over the years, any like fight that you've gotten into that you won, all of that just slips, like everything that you've built basically slips away because like you like dudes.
Yeah. Because you're friends with a dude who likes dudes. You know what I mean? Like, which is the most ridiculous thing. But this is the mindset of children. But I think it has to do with just oppression, you know, like if a group of people is oppressed, you have to find another group to feel that you have power over.
There you go.
So that's what that translates to, in my opinion. You know, it's just this idea.
If you go back to like the idea is like if you've been dehumanized, then your only like recourse is to dehumanize anybody else.
Correct. Correct. Just how Irish men were the equivalent of being an African American, and now all of a sudden being Irish is just being white. Oh, congratulations, you blended into the in crowd. Now who do you hate? Black people. The same way, you know, a lot of Latinos, lighter skinned Latinos have a problem with darker skinned Latinos, even though you're from the same country. Like, you're all Dominican. It's not even like the United States where, like, there's this vast melting pot of people. Like, it's just oppression.
Sometimes
and it's masculinity.
Family. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
You know, like, you're making the family lighter, you know? Like, it's crazy. But it's all embedded in masculinity, you know?
Well, like, to kind of slowly wrap it up, we've talked a lot about performing masculinity in the hood, performing masculinity as a minority or as an oppressed, racially oppressed person. You're going into the law system. You're hoping to go into the law system to like better equip young men of color and better educate young men of color. How so and why? And how do you hope to see the hood changes for the next generation or 3 generations down?
Like, how would I love to see my South Bronx? I would love to see the young men that are here feel like they have the ability to grow, to be smarter, to be pulled over by a police officer and know that they don't have to talk, know what they should and should not do, to protect themselves. It's something so small as that, you know, I would feel like I've done a good job. If I could get 100 kids and even adults that just don't know their rights, that have been pulled over, no, I don't have to talk. Here's my ID. That's it. Like, do I have the right to go? You know, am I free to go? Am I being detained? Oh, but let's talk about this. Can I have a lawyer then if you want to talk? So if I can make 100 people just do that, then I feel like I did a good job. Because there were 100 friends that I had that didn't know that went to jail, that are dead, that, you know what I mean, that have a record now because they opened their mouth too much because they didn't know. You know, I was arrested once for having an expired license. No traffic.
For that?
You can, which I did not know. It technically falls under not having a license. It was a week after my birthday, and they pulled me out of my car on 42nd Street and 8th Ave, made me take off my sneakers, made me take off my hoodie, fully patted me down. There were about 10 cops there. And they were like,
I don't know why I'm surprised.
We're just gonna take you in. Don't worry. We're just gonna clarify. Mind you, I had a PBA card, no criminal record. I'm speaking to them nice and calmly. Hey, what's going on? Why is this happening? When I was in my car and they were checking my stuff, like my friend who's a detective was like, you're gonna get a summons, Chris. What are you even calling me? Like, you just go to court and that's it. I was arrested. I was arrested by a woman that was 5'1". And, you know, speaking to masculinity, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this little woman with a gun and all these men are taking me to jail. And the way I felt, you know, like Hannah, my wife, is sitting in the car. I have 2 friends in the car, and I'm just plucked from society. That's simple. Like, I'm going about my business, taking them home, and all of a sudden I'm in jail. I'm in handcuffs, and I'm in this bullpen where it's like blood and shit and like writings on the wall, and it's just like
blood and shit.
Yeah, that shit ain't a pretty place. Being in a bullpen is not pretty. You would think that it was one of the most dehumanizing things I've ever had to go through. And it sucked. And then the litigation that came after it was even worse. And the issue too with that arrest was like the feelings after the fact. It's like I had to relive again what happened to me when I was 12 at that complex level, as far as like, I've been stopped and frisked. Yes. Have I ever had a gun pulled on me by an officer? No, that was that first time when I wrote that article, when it happened when I was a kid. And then this was the first time that I had been arrested like that. And you walk away hurt. Like that walk from the precinct to my friend's house, who lived on 42nd and 12th, which I told the cops, like I cried because I was so angry. Because, you know, in the hood, at least you can get angry, and if someone wrongs you, you can go get at them. There's a way for you to release that. Mm-hmm. And it's a horrific way to release, but you have something you can do. You can't do that with a cop. So you're just let go, you know. I'm just let go, and now I'm back into society with a court date, and I'm like, the fuck just happened? Like, how did 4 hours of my life just get taken from me? And luckily the whole thing got dismissed because the judge deemed it was an illegal stop, but it showed me how the system works, and that's why I went into criminal justice. Like, that was the best and worst day of my life, because it gave me more of a purpose because it happened to me, where it was like, I can now go out there and I can try to help people. You know, I can teach people what they have to deal with and how they can deal with it after the fact. Because, you know, I've known many men that have gotten arrested that come out angry because a cop arrested them on some bullshit and go beat the shit out of someone else, you know, because it's like you have to feel strong again.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Chris.
You're very welcome.
You know, with that said, you know, we just want to thank you for listening to the show. Like, tell your people. Hopefully you got some value out of the episode today. I know I did. I think we did. So please drop us a line on iTunes. Leave us some stars, you know. You can follow us at Twitter at Masculinity Pod. That's Masculinity with a K. On Facebook at Masculinity Podcast. Again with a K. My name is Samantha and
This is Roy George Philip I.
And this has been Masculinity. Thank you very much for listening. And we're out.
Peace.